public live stream. And we are now live streaming. Welcome everyone. This is Mac, VP of Quality, and this is the Quality Key Review for November, the month of November, calendar year 2021. We provided an overview already of our metrics, and I hope that everyone has digested. We can jump into questions right away. Sid, I believe there are some questions from Sid already, so we can go ahead to number 5.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mac, and thanks for the video. And yeah, just want to say metrics look great. So great work. It's really impressive.
Thank you very much. Ka and Tanya are here as well. They've been a great help. Thank you. Sid, I believe you have number 6 as well for the header and the agenda.
Very small thing, but can we remove the header in the that is in the agenda link in the calendar invite, because it sends you to the wrong place in the doc, and I always am disoriented for like 2 seconds.
Okay. We will go ahead and action on that. Thank you.
It's a bit of a more personal interest question, but have we heard of Data Robot? Apparently it's a popular way to kind of do end-to-end testing, but I haven't heard of it. I wonder whether it's because I'm from like Ruby on Rails clan and they don't use it, or it seems that it has companies using it. If it's any good, why haven't I heard of it, basically, is my question. Probably because I'm out of the game for a long time, but I don't know.
I haven't heard of it either, so I may be out of the game. Tanya, you're closer to the testing. I know there are some tools that we have been proposed, but we haven't geared on one. Do you want to let us know what the land is like?
Yeah, I haven't heard of this one either. I think the main tool that we've been leaning on for some types of testing is K6, but as far as I know, we haven't been considering any sort of end-to-end solutions like this.
So we can look into it deeper if you'd like our preliminary analysis. Happy to look into it.
I think I'm confused about what it's even called. Give me a second. Robot framework. That's what I meant.
I haven't heard of this one either, but as Mike said, we can do some research and come back to you with recommendations.
Thank you for the link set and the share screen. We'll look into it if it's applicable to.
No, sorry, I was muted. No need to look into it. I just want to double check, like, why haven't I heard of it? Well, because you haven't heard of it either. So we're on the same page. Thanks.
Thank you.
Where did it come across your radar? How did you hear of it?
I was looking for kind of open source UiPath / Microsoft Power Automate. I wonder whether there was an open source offering there. One thing that's also a bit too much in the weed, but I don't see any other questions. We want to get time to first failure down. And one way to do that is to run the test that failed the last time first. And I wonder what the fastest way to do that is, because I think I heard about like, oh, we need all kinds of infrastructure before we do that. But it seems to me you can just look at the log of the last build and see what test failed. If a test failed, then just run that test again. And that seems like I don't know, a 2-day job if you do that only for RSpec or something like that, something that we have a lot of tests from. But I'm probably missing something. Oh, Kyle?
Yeah, we essentially did what you just described, running the failed tests. We had to build a little bit of tooling, but we're evaluating results this month. It landed in 14.5 towards the end of the milestone. So next key review, we'll have an update on what we found coming out of this. We have been doing selective tests. And so really what we've seen is for MRs prior to approval, this hasn't running the previously failed tests where it's already happening with our minimal pipelines. But for tests after approval, this has still been beneficial.
Cool, that's super cool. So it landed in 14.5, but we probably didn't put it in the release post, or did we?
It was really just internal tooling, like internal pipeline tooling. So the jobs that take the RSpec artifact and run those. So you're right, it wasn't in the release post, but because it was more for internal usage at this point.
Cool.
And
you
we'll
probably need custom code for every framework, right? If you do run tests in Python, you need different code to run those.
Yes, yeah. We can get the failed tests from the product, but piping it into what is running the test is where the custom tooling is, correct?
Cool. Well, that's super cool. What did you think of it now that you made it? Like, is this a path we should go down, or is it a bit too clumsy? Or
I would say it's worth exploring more and optimizing further. So our pipeline, we have a lot of setup in front that still has to run before these jobs. So looking to eliminate that setup can accelerate this further. And that's the future iteration that I want to look towards.
cool.
Thanks for that. I also want to highlight to this group that we have a stakeholder review with the testing group. We can bring this into further solutions validation in that group as well. We've been in constant contact. We'll show them the results of what we found here.
Cool. And it's probably hard to productize this, but I'm very interested in productizing it. I think over time, we're going to go to probability-based testing, where the amount of tests that you run and the length that you wait for depend on the probability that there's a problem, the severity of that problem, and the environment you're deploying, the impact that will have. So like, those are 5 factors. So like, and probably even more, but let's say a very experienced engineer merge something into, well, worst case, a very junior engineer merge something into a piece of our code base that frequently generates errors. Then I'm going to run the full test suite, because they're also deploying, if this test succeeds, I'm going to do a deploy to production. Versus an experienced engineer who doesn't make a lot of mistakes on a low risk part of the code base is doing something, and we're pretty sure they're not even going to try to merge the result. Like that's a lower stakes, and I'm not going to run all the end-to-end tests because it just tested that whole code like 2 minutes before the previous commit. So I think our approach of running 100,000 tests on every commit, it's not going to scale. And I don't think it should for other people either. And I think right now, a lot of companies are doing lots of thinking and debates about this. Well, I think automation should kind of take that role. And we should be a combination of an ML model plus, well, not even an ML model, probably some statistical factors. And it should say, well, GitLab ended up not testing this because it was low stakes.
Thank you for the context and strategies. I agree. I think running the test that matters at the right place and right size really resonates. And I can see that it's a lot of challenges in many other companies that they have to roll their own. If we can solve this and productize this, there's much to be made here, much results to gain.
Yeah, and then the other shout out I'll say related to that is we've had an initiative in eBeef to run less tests per MR. And our initial results on front end and back end test optimization is we reduced from 189,000 tests run to about 30,000 prior to approval for MR. And once we reduce like flaky spec impact, we can look to shift that later to work towards merge train and run the full set of tests on merge train and really evaluate that full risk at that point if needed. Our error rate that we see is somewhere between 5 and 12%. It's hard to estimate with flaky test failures in there. So we're trying to eliminate that and then look further to refine this and provide that feedback to the testing group for solution validation. But it just, at a high level, it just looks at the files that are changed and says these are the tests that map to those files using dynamic test mapping for Rails, and Jest has built-in tooling for it and runs only those tests.
Cool. I assume there's no other questions yet. Let me double check that. And then GitHub recently came out with what we call merge trains, and we released a couple of years ago, if I remember correctly. Now that GitHub also has it, people started to ask for kind of merge dependencies, where you can say, look, don't merge my code before this MR or this MR. And I can totally see that being a thing in a lot of companies. Is this something that we have a need for? Tanya is smiling a lot, so would love any takes on whether this is something we should strive for.
Okay, Tanya, I'll take the notes first.
Yeah, this is very timely. We just had this exact conversation on a call with Jihui last night. This is something that they desperately need. It will speed up their processes quite a bit. As an extension of that, community contributors also could use this quite a bit to help sort of untangle the dependencies of having to wait for something to be merged and make it into master before you can start to work on your next MR. Kyle or Mike, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, so to add to the context, the need here is there's a chain of MRs that is being upstreamed, and we need better visibility on how they interplay with each other, which one needs to merge first and merge later. There's dependencies that needs to be merged first and it gets tested. So there is need here at the review level. I think the conversation here is not only at the review level, but at the running pipelines, merging level as well, and getting confidence there. So I think the two pieces match, and we are starting the conversation with our product counterpart on how to move faster in the review. I think there's a gap that we need to fill and plan out for how does this look like when it comes to the ops section, how it comes to the test section. So yes, I think this is where we should put a focus on honing to be sharper.
Yep. And we have dependencies between issues, but it would be weird to have to create an issue to indicate the dependency. So probably we need MR dependencies. And then if there's issue dependencies, the MR dependency can be auto-filled from that. Well, let's not do that iteration yet, but I think something like merge dependencies makes sense in a ton of organizations.
I can take the action item to have that conversation with our product counterparts, and then we can review it the next time we have a key review. We can track it here. So
great.
It's a low pressure ask.
Yep, and we can also start making a roadmap for GitHub in 3 years. We'll then also have it, which is kind of good. Like this industry should go a lot faster. So cool. And I think the most important thing is like an issue with kind of mock-ups of the interface so that people can wrap their brain around it because it's so abstract. We find that with merge trains, the hardest thing was explaining it. And then I bet that if you I'd be happy to tweet about it. I bet there's a lot of people willing to help to make this reality, because it's a need for a lot of people.
Thank you, Sid. I believe there are no more questions. Brian, you're muted. Do you have any?
Cool. And Mac, the thing you can say if to invite questions is, even if you haven't read the materials and saw the video and you're afraid it's covered in there, don't worry, because I'll ask your questions. Not a problem if it was covered.
Thank you for the feedback.
But this is not a group conversation. Sorry, that's for group conversations. This is a key meeting. But yeah, great work. Really appreciate it in this because, and also Mac, you're taking on additional responsibilities with all kinds of other projects. Really appreciate you stepping up.
Thank you. One team, and my team members help a lot too.
Yeah, well, it means you have a great team that you're able to do even more.
Thank you. I think that's no more questions. We'll conclude our key review. We'll see you in the next time. Thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Matt.